You never forget the sound of laughter when it's aimed at you, not when it follows failure. And especially not when it comes from the people you would have died protecting. It happened 2 weeks into deployment at Outpost Riker, a forgotten patch of dust and concrete, buried deep in the southern desert. The kind of place where everything smelled like gun oil and dry wind. The day had started quiet, too quiet. I was in the command bunker, eyes locked on 3 glowing monitors, watching drone telemetry scroll like a heartbeat. Routine surveillance. Nothing unusual. Until it was at 6:47 hours. A heat signature flickered across the grid, small, mobile, steady. I cross-checked the frequency. It matched previous insurgent logistics convoys. Reed, our commanding officer, leaned over my shoulder. "You got eyes?"
he asked. "Affirmative," I said.
"Target appears hostile, moving along restricted coordinates." Reed hesitated just long enough to let doubt creep in. Then he keyed his mic. "Command, confirm clearance for strike." The call came back seconds later. "Clear to engage." My palms were slick on the console. I zoomed in, calculated the impact radius, checked collateral markers. Everything aligned. No civilians, no anomalies. I gave the final confirmation. Coordinates locked. Authorizing fire. The drone feed trembled. A streak of light cut across the desert sky. Then silence. And then the explosion. When the dust cleared, the image on the screen didn't make sense. The wreckage wasn't military. It was smaller. Wrong shape, wrong heat return. Reed frowned. "Zoom in?" I did. And that's when I saw them, bodies, not armed. Not uniformed, civilians. My stomach turned to ice. The chatter on comms erupted, confusion, shouting, disbelief. Someone screamed, "Abort mission, abort." Too late. I remember the look Reed gave me, half shock, half rage. "What the hell did you just do, Holt?" Sir, the signal there was interference." But he'd already turned away, barking orders to secure the perimeter. My words fell into static. By evening, HQ had called. Mission suspended. Classified footage locked. I was officially under review. The title they didn't say out loud, but everyone heard anyway. The one who blew the strike, that night. The mess hall felt smaller than ever. The air hung heavy with unspoken judgment. Every whisper felt aimed at me. Every glance turned into a smirk. Reed sat at the far table with the senior NCOs. I could hear them through the hum of the generators, laughter muffled. "But not enough," she called the hit, someone said. "Lucky we didn't lose more. Hate should pull her license." The sound carved through me worse than any reprimand could. Morales. My closest ally in the unit tried to meet my eyes. She didn't. She just stared at her plate. When I stood to leave, Reed's voice cut across the room. "Next time, Holt, maybe double-check your hero instincts before you light up the desert." The laughter that followed was quiet, but it felt like gunfire. I walked out before they could see the tears threatening to escape. Outside, the desert night was freezing. I could still hear them inside, the clatter of trays, the low rumble of voices, the echo of my own humiliation. I sat on the concrete steps outside the bunker and stared at the sky. The stars were motionless, indifferent to all of it. I thought about the training simulators, the endless drills, the years spent proving that precision was my weapon. Now, one call, one signal, and I was a pariah. Later. In the command center, I replayed the footage on the internal monitor. Over and over. The coordinates, the heat map, the confirmation tone. And there, just before the missile release, a flicker. Barely noticeable. A sharp distortion spike across the frequency band. "Interference," I whispered. I paused, zoomed in, ran diagnostics. The data didn't lie. Something had disrupted the signal between our feed and HQ's uplink. That anomaly wasn't random, but none of that mattered. I'd already been branded guilty. Reed entered behind me, his reflection sharp in the dark screen. "Still trying to justify it?"
He said. "I'm trying to understand it," I replied. "Here's what you need to understand," he said coldly.
"We lost 3 civilians today because you jumped the gun. You want forgiveness? Don't expect it from this unit." He turned and walked out. I stared at his retreating figure, his confidence, his authority, and something inside me broke. Not just because of what I'd lost, but because I knew he wanted it this way. The perfect scapegoat. The perfect story to protect his command record. At midnight, Morales found me still sitting there. HQ's reviewing the classified footage tomorrow, she said softly. I nodded without looking up. Maybe they'll see the truth. Maybe, she whispered. Or maybe they'll see what they want to see. She left me with that, and the hum of the screens became my only companion. I watched the footage one last time before the lights cut out. That flicker on the feed, the distortion, haunted me. It wasn't just a technical glitch. It felt deliberate, controlled. And as the generator lights dimmed, I whispered to myself, they can laugh all they want. But when HQ plays that footage, I paused, staring into the grainy reflection of my own face on the black screen. Asterisk. They'll wish they hadn't. When the world sees you as a mistake, you start to question every decision that brought you there. Every salute, every order, every dream. I did that after the strike. They stripped my clearance, reassigned my console, and gave me what they called administrative leave. I called it exile. I spent 3 days in silence. 3 days hearing nothing but the hum of broken air conditioning and the memory of laughter. Then HQ sent for me, Lieutenant Holt, the officer said, not looking up from his clipboard. You're to remain on base until further notice. HQ will review your mission feed. That was it. No comfort. No chance to explain. Just a reminder that my career and maybe my name were now property of whatever verdict came next. I walked out of that office feeling smaller than I ever had. Until Morales found me outside, leaning against the comms tower. Hey, she said carefully. Reed's spinning the story already. I sighed. Figures. The perfect leader never takes the fall. You're not done yet, she said. HQ hasn't made a decision. Maybe they'll believe a soldier who just bombed civilians. I cut in bitterly. She didn't argue. She just pressed a folded piece of paper into my hand. Then fight for it anyway. It was my father's picture. The one I kept pinned to my locker. Her way of reminding me why I ever put on the uniform in the first place. I grew up in the shadow of a name people saluted before they even knew me. Captain Daniel Holt, decorated, disciplined, dead at 40-1. He was killed in a covert rescue operation they never told us about. All I knew was what the folded flag on our mantle didn't say. I was 16 when they handed it to my mother. She didn't cry in front of them, but she shattered in private. I remember her whispering, "Don't ever let this uniform eat you alive, kid." I didn't listen. At 19, I enlisted, not to follow him, but to redeem what was left of him. My father died under classified circumstances, buried under secrecy. I thought if I joined, I could uncover what honor really meant. Turns out, honor in the real world is in medals and speeches. It's surviving long enough to keep your word. I was built for data, not politics. I didn't need validation, just precision. My world was numbers, frequencies, and coordinates that never lied. At least, I thought they'd IDN single quotes T. At the academy. They used to call me Ghost Eye, the one who spotted anomalies before the instructors could. Every mission simulation, I was flawless. Every grade, perfect, but that kind of perfection is dangerous. It paints a target on your back long before you ever step onto a battlefield. When I first got assigned to Outpost Riker, Reed didn't hide his skepticism. Another analyst with a metal complex, he muttered during our first briefing. I laughed it off. I don't need medals, sir. Just results. He didn't laugh. I should have known right then. Confidence doesn't impress men like him. It threatens them, over the next few weeks. And my reports started outperforming everyone's. The drone ops were sharper, faster. HQ even cited my name in a commendation Reed received for excellence in mission execution. He didn't thank me. He just said, "You're doing your job." But in the way he said it, I could hear it. The warning, the more I excelled, the more the room grew colder. Soldiers don't hate competence. They hate what it reminds them of. Then came the mission that ruined everything. Our team had been running recon on insurgent transport routes for 3 nights straight. The fatigue was getting to everyone. Reed ordered reduced staff on rotation. I volunteered for the early watch. I was alone when the signal came in. The one that would change everything. A flicker on the radar. A match to previous hostels. It was textbook and it was my call, but that flicker, that tiny shift in data I saw later. It was there. I know it was, Reed said afterward that no one else saw it. Convenient. But I'd logged it. I knew it wasn't just interference. Someone or something had touched that feed. Maybe that's why it didn't make sense. Maybe that's why the strike went wrong. And maybe that's why the people who laughed at me would soon learn that laughter can't survive the truth. The night before the classified footage review, I stood in front of the mirror in my quarters, uniform pressed, insignia polished. My reflection looked steady. My hands didn't. I wasn't sure if I was fighting for my innocence anymore, or for a chance to prove that my father's blood hadn't been spilled for nothing. I thought of something he used to say when he trained recruits. The difference between a mistake and a test is what you do next. That night, I whispered it out loud for the first time in years because maybe this wasn't punishment. Maybe it was a second chance disguised as humiliation, and I wasn't about to waste it. They say the moment after an explosion is the loudest kind of silence. Not because everything goes quiet, but because your body forgets what silence used to sound like. The blast hit before I even saw the error. One flicker of static, one green blip, and then light. The sound didn't reach me right away. First came the tremor, like the earth was breathing fire. Then the shockwave rolled through the outpost windows, bending metal like paper. The command room fell into chaos, shouts, radios cutting in and out. Alarms that wouldn't stop. And in the middle of it all, my console still glowing, the cursor frozen on my last confirmed strike. Who authorized that launch? Reed's voice tore through the static. My throat went dry. My finger hovered over the comms key, but the words wouldn't come out. He turned toward me, face red, veins pulsing. Lieutenant Holt, was that you? I nodded, once, barely. The room went dead still. Someone muttered, she hit the wrong coordinates. Another whispered, friendly sector. Jesus Christ. The laughter came later. At first, it was just disbelief. A few nervous chuckles. Then full-on smirks, like I just ruined a simulation, not a mission. Nice work, Ghost Eye, someone said. Didn't see that one coming, huh? I don't remember standing up, but I remember my legs shaking so hard the floor seemed to tilt. My headset slipped off, hit the ground, and cracked. The sound it made was the only thing real in that room. Reed didn't defend me. Didn't stop them. He just stared, not with anger, but with that quiet, calculated satisfaction of a man watching his alibi right itself. Hours later, after the debris reports started coming in, they told us the truth, or their version of it. No hostile presence. No enemy vehicles. Just a convoy of civilians moving through a restricted corridor, the same corridor I'd marked hostile. They didn't let me out of the control center until midnight. My uniform reeked of burnt circuits and sweat. I sat there, numb, replaying the feed over and over in my mind, trying to find the glitch that wasn't supposed to exist. I saw it every time. That flicker. That damn flicker. But it was gone from the logs now. Deleted. The coordinates in the final report didn't match what I entered. I tried to speak up, but Reed's voice cut through the air before I could. She's tired, he said to the investigators. Been overworked. It's an unfortunate misread. Unfortunate misread. That's what he called it. I wasn't even allowed to defend myself. The inquiry started that night. They didn't need a villain. They already had one. The morning after, the base was quiet. Too quiet. Everywhere I walked, eyes followed. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Even Morales, the only person who'd ever trusted me, couldn't meet my eyes. I overheard someone outside the mess hall say, HQ's gonna bury her. Can't have that kind of screw-up on record. And I knew they would. They'd turn my mistake into a story. A cautionary tale for rookies. A file that would never see daylight again, but guilt has a sound too. That night, when I finally managed to sleep, I woke up to the echo of screams. Not real, but close enough. The civilians.
The convoy.
The coordinates. It all bled together. Every time I blinked, I saw the flash. Every time I exhaled, I smelled the smoke. I wasn't haunted by what I'd done. I was haunted by the silence that followed. The silence of people who knew something was wrong but said nothing. Because silence, in this world, isn't peace. It's permission. 2 days later, HQ called for a data sweep. Reed made a show of cooperating, standing behind me as I opened the mission feed. Pull up the strike log, he said. I did. Line by line, frame by frame, until I reached the second before detonation. And there it was again. Barely visible. A single skipped frame, time-stamped 3 seconds earlier than my recorded authorization. That wasn't human error. It was insertion. Someone had overridden the data stream, either remotely or from within the system. I looked up at Reed, but his expression didn't change. Just a faint smirk. Must have been your nervous hand, he said quietly. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't about a mistake. It was about control, and someone had just used mine to destroy lives. And my own career, in one keystroke. For the rest of that week I stopped speaking. Not because I was guilty, but because every word felt like it would be twisted. The only sound that stayed with me was that faint hum of the control room. And the laughter that followed me out of it. They thought they'd won. They thought silence meant surrender. But the thing about silence is, it records everything. And soon, they'd hear exactly what it had to say. The call came at 0600 hours. I was halfway through packing when the intercom buzzed. Lieutenant Holt, report to 8Q Viewing Chamber 3. Bring your credentials. The tone was clipped. Official, the kind that doesn't leave room for questions. I grabbed my file, straightened my collar, and walked down that sterile hallway lined with faces pretending not to look. The same people who'd whispered, mocked, and turned their backs now stood in rigid silence as I passed. It wasn't respect. It was curiosity. They all wanted to see how the disgraced analyst would break when the truth played out on screen. The room was small, cold, and reeked of disinfectant. A single projector hung from the ceiling, its light cutting through the dust. Across the table sat Major Reed, arms folded, wearing that same mask of authority he used to hide behind every time things went wrong. Next to him, an HQ technician stood ready at the console. Morales was in the back. I hadn't expected her to come. Her presence was the only thing keeping me from walking out. Lieutenant Holt, the reviewing officer, began. We've retrieved fragments of the classified feed from your mission. You'll view them here and verify authenticity. Reed leaned forward, voice low but sharp. She recognized her own work. I didn't look at him. I just nodded. The lights dimmed, and the footage began. At first, it was just the familiar rhythm of the mission feed. Radar pulses, data overlays, transmission chatter. Then the image stabilized on the convoy, a cluster of thermal signatures moving in formation. I remembered this frame. I remembered the pit in my stomach right before the strike, but then I saw something else. In the corner of the feed. Faint, almost invisible, a flash of distortion. A handoff signature. The data stream had been mirrored. Not hacked externally, but rerouted within the local network. Someone in the room had done it. Pause. I said quietly. The tech froze the frame. There, I pointed, zooming in. That's not drone telemetry. That's a manual relay signal. Reed scoffed. You're reaching, Holt. But the tech hesitated. Sir, she's right. That's an internal override. Looks like a secondary operator accessed the feed moments before launch. The reviewing officer frowned. Who had access clearance during this mission? Reed didn't blink. Myself and Lieutenant Holt, no one else. The room fell silent. All eyes turned toward me, then toward him. I could hear my heartbeat. The footage resumed. The override flickered, and then there it was. A new cursor appeared on screen, aligning coordinates just a fraction north of my original mark. Barely enough to notice. But enough to destroy lives, I whispered. That's not me. Reed shifted in his chair. You're saying someone else used your console?
No, I said.
I'm saying someone used yours. Morales stepped forward, voice steady. Sir, authorization keys are logged automatically. Pull the access ID. The tech's fingers flew over the keyboard. Numbers streamed across the screen. And then it froze on one line. User ID, CMD_Reed_alpha. The room went ice cold. Reed stood up slowly, jaw tight. That's impossible. My console was locked, was it? I asked. Because I remember you asking me to reroute the feed through your terminal that morning. Said it would reduce lag time. I thought it was strange. But I followed the chain of command. His silence said everything. The reviewing officer turned toward the tech. Confirm timestamp and operator verification. It's real, the tech said, voice shaking slightly. He made the coordinate shift 6 seconds before launch. Reed's mask cracked. You don't know what you're talking about. That feed was corrupted. She probably... Enough. The officer's voice cut him off. The footage will speak for itself. And it did. Frame by frame, the truth unfolded. The deliberate override. The falsified coordinates, the deleted metadata. It wasn't an accident. It was sabotage. I felt the weight lift. Not joy, not relief. Just something close to oxygen. For the first time since the blast, I could breathe. But what I didn't expect was the second clip. The tech looked confused. Sir, there's another file linked to the same mission ID. Marked Spectre. The officer frowned. Play it. The screen flickered again, and there I was. Not in the control room, but in a hidden feed. Security cam footage, top-down. It showed me entering the ops bay, running the pre-checks. Then, 5 minutes later, Reed walking in behind me. Inserting a data key into the master console, I remembered that key.
He told me it was a firmware update.
Now, watching it from above, I realized it wasn't. It was the moment he rewrote the entire mission. The Major's voice broke through the silence. Where did this footage come from? Classified satellite feed, the tech replied. Wasn't in the original case file. It was buried in the secure archives. Someone didn't want it seen. Reed's face drained of color. You have no idea what you're interfering with. I looked at him, steady now. No, sir. I think I finally do. The lights came back on. The room was heavy, thicker than air, full of something that felt like justice starting to breathe. For months, they'd let me carry the blame. Let me drown in humiliation. Let me believe I was broken. But the truth had been sitting there the whole time, locked behind layers of classified silence. And now that it was out, there was no putting it back. Reed's laughter had haunted me since the day of the blast. But that morning, as security escorted him out of the chamber, the only sound left was his silence, for once. Silence belonged to me. They say the truth sets you free, but in the military, truth is a weapon, and the one who holds it decides who walks away clean. The morning after the footage review, I was summoned to the debriefing room, the same sterile chamber where soldiers go to defend their honor. Or bury it. The air inside was heavy with formality. 2 flags, 1 long table, and 3 men in uniform who had already read the report before I even walked in. Morel sat in the corner again, her face unreadable but her eyes sharp, like she was memorizing everything for later. Lieutenant Holt, the chair officer, began. You've been under provisional review following the Outpost Riker incident. After last night's discovery, the narrative has shifted. Shifted, I repeated softly. That's one word for it. The man ignored my tone. HQ confirmed tampering in the feed. Major Reed is under arrest pending a full tribunal. A quiet wave of satisfaction moved through me, not victory, but vindication. The kind that doesn't heal you, but at least stops the bleeding. However,
He continued, the department regrets the breach of protocol that allowed this to happen.
That includes your involvement. I blinked. My involvement. He clasped his hands. You rerouted the telemetry through Major Reed's terminal, correct? I hesitated. Under his direct order? Yes, but no authorization was filed. That's a violation of operational procedure. So you're saying I'm still guilty of following a superior's command? Lieutenant, no, please, I said, my voice cutting through the tension. Let's get it on record. I followed a major's order during an active mission. And when that order turned into a cover-up, I was the one court-martialed in public opinion. Now you're telling me my mistake wasn't trusting a liar. It was trusting the system that protected him. The room went still. The officer exhaled through his nose. Clearly used to soldiers who obey, not soldiers who speak. Your tone, Lieutenant, isn't helping your case. I leaned forward. Neither did silence. They questioned me for nearly 2 hours. About the override, about the protocols, about whether I could have detected the insertion sooner. Every answer I gave was dissected like a confession dot at one point. I caught Morale's reflection in the glass divider. She gave me a slight nod. As if to say, keep going, Dot, so I did. I told them about the flicker in the data stream. The missing log. The firmware update. That wasn't. I laid it all out. Every lie Reed had built and every silence they had rewarded. When I finished, no one spoke for several minutes. Then the chair officer stood. You're being reinstated to active duty, effective immediately. My throat tightened. You're serious? Yes. HQ has cleared your record. Your commendation will be restored. And, he paused, glancing toward Morales, you're being reassigned to a special analysis team. Command wants eyes like yours somewhere. Cleaner. Cleaner. The word carried too much irony for me to respond. After the debrief, Morales caught up to me in the corridor. So, that's it? You're back? Back, maybe, I said. But not the same. She smiled faintly. You think anyone walks out of that room the same? I wanted to laugh, but my voice came out hollow. He almost got away with it, Morales. If that footage hadn't surfaced, she cut me off. But it did. Someone high up wanted it seen. That thought hadn't occurred to me yet. I froze. I'm saying the feed was buried in a level you didn't have clearance for, she said quietly. Someone up there pulled it back out. Maybe Reed made the wrong enemies. It wasn't justice then. It was politics. Reed had been exposed because it served someone's interest, not because the truth suddenly mattered. Still, a small part of me didn't care. For once, the right person was in cuffs. That night, I went back to my quarters and sat by the window. Outside, the base lights stretched into the desert like stars that forgot how to shine. My terminal blinked. A secure message. Sender. Classified subject. Debrief addendum. For your eyes only. I opened it. There was no text. Just a single video clip. Timestamped 2 days before the mission. Reed. Sitting in the same control room. Talking to someone off-screen. I turned the volume up. A voice answered him. Filtered. Distorted, but commanding. Keep it quiet, Major. We can't have the convoy linked to our operation. Shift the coordinates. She take the fall. Reed nodded.
Understood, sir.
My stomach dropped. That wasn't sabotage for ego or rivalry. It was a cover-up for something deeper. Something HQ still hadn't mentioned in my debrief. Someone had ordered that strike. I replayed the clip twice before locking it away in an encrypted folder. If they knew I'd seen it, I'd be next. For now, I had to play it smart. Stay quiet, stay observant. Let them think I was just grateful to have my name cleared. But inside, I knew the reckoning wasn't over. It was only beginning. Because if that voice belonged to who I suspected, then the blast that destroyed my reputation was just a distraction. The real operation was still classified. And still active. They reinstated me like nothing had happened. New clearance. New insignia. New base. But the truth is, once you've seen the system from the inside, you never really come back clean. I kept my head down those first few weeks. Showed up on time. Answered to Lieutenant again? Smiled when they said they were proud to have me back, but every night, when the halls went dark, I could still hear that voice from the clip, the one giving Reed the order. Shift the coordinates. She take the fall. That wasn't some rogue whisper. That was someone powerful. Someone untouchable. And they were still out there. My reassignment was to Division Echo, a small, isolated unit tasked with data integrity and threat assessment. In simpler words, digital janitors for the Department of Defense. We cleaned the network. We erased anomalies. We made the record look perfect. They thought I'd fit right in. They were wrong. On my second week, I found a buried file marked with a strange tag. Spectre, R-01. My pulse spiked. Spectre, the same codey name attached to the hidden footage that exposed Reed. It wasn't supposed to exist anymore. Yet there it was, tucked between encrypted traffic analysis reports. Disguised as a maintenance log. When I tried to open it, the system flashed a warning. Access requires level SIGMAC. That clearance didn't exist on paper, but my father had once mentioned something like it. In one of his old letters before he died, Sigma channels are where they hide the ghosts, kid. If you ever find one, don't open it unless you're ready for what it shows you. I wasn't ready. I opened it anyway. The file was in video this time. It was a chain of intercepted transmissions, dated 6 months before my mission, during the same operation my father died in. Different names, same project. Spectre. *1 transcript read. Target confirmed. Civilian cover authorized. Eliminate assets before extraction. Maintain silence. No attribution. The second line froze my blood. Authorization. CMD_read_alpha. Secondary operative. Capt. D. Holt. My father's name. It didn't make sense. He'd been declared Kier in a failed rescue op, not a covert elimination. The official report said friendly fire. But if these logs were real, then my father's accident was part of the same classified network that had used me years later. 2 generations. Same operation. Same coding name. Spectre. Wasn't a mission. It was a cover system, a black layer protocol that rewrote blame. In real time, the next morning, I went to Morales. She'd been reassigned to the same base. Though in logistics now, I told her everything, the file, the transcripts, my father's name. She went pale. You shouldn't have opened that. Too late, I said. They used the same clearance structure. The same fake coordinates. Reed was a puppet, just like me. She shook her head. Then whoever's behind this still has access. They could wipe the evidence, or worse. I already made a copy, I said. Offline, her eyes widened. Do you know what that means? If they trace that back. I know exactly what it means, I said. It means I'm not waiting for another cover-up. That night, I stayed in the data vault long after everyone else left. The hum of the servers was steady, comforting. Almost, I started tracing the Sigma network, following breadcrumbs of code that shouldn't exist. Every trail led to dead ends, until one IP blinked alive, a remote.
Access node. Active. Someone was inside the system right now.
Lines of code began to move on their own, deleting the Spectre file. Not tonight, I whispered. I fired up an old firewall script I'd built back at Riker. It was crude, unstable, but it worked. It locked the intruder out for 10 seconds. Long enough for me to pull the metadata. Origin, HQ command server, Washington, D.C. access tag, SIGMA_1, VOSS. That name hit me like a punch. General Edwin Voss, Deputy Director of Operations. The same man who delivered my father's folded flag. The same voice from the recording. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every part of me wanted to storm HQ, shove the file in their faces, scream the truth, but I'd learned something from Reed's fall. The system doesn't collapse when it's wrong. It collapses when it's embarrassed. So I planned instead. I started cataloging everything, the feed manipulation, the Sigma clearances, the shadow transmissions. Morales helped me off record, running cross-checks through satellite archives. We found 3 more Spectre missions, all labeled operational anomalies, all blamed on unauthorized personnel. All with erased evidence. It wasn't one mistake. It was a pattern. A week later, I got another message, anonymous this time. No subject line, no sender. Just one sentence. Stop digging, Lieutenant. Or you'll join your father in the archives. For a moment I stared at the screen, pulse hammering in my ears. Then I smiled, not out of courage, but clarity, because if they were warning me, it meant I was close. And if there's one thing the system never counts on, it's the soldier it already wrote off. I wasn't a ghost in their records anymore. I was the shadow in their system. The briefing room looked exactly the same as the day they'd humiliated. Same projector, same metal chairs, same smell of burnt coffee and fear. Only this time, I wasn't the one under review. HQ had called for a public verification session. That's their sanitized term for when the truth has become too loud to bury. Morales was beside me, hands folded tight. Across the room sat the brass, all those decorated ghosts in polished uniforms who swore allegiance to silence more than country. General Voss wasn't there. He didn't need to be. Men like him don't show up to their own reckoning. They let other people take the hits, but his voice was about to fill the room anyway. The presiding officer cleared his throat. We are convened to review evidence related to Operation Spectre. All present will remain silent until instructed. He gave a small nod toward the technician. The lights dimmed, the screen flickered alive. And there it was, the recording I'd risked everything to extract. Reed's voice first, steady, deferential. Understood, sir. Shift the coordinates. She take the fall. Then came the voice that had haunted my nights. Maintain silence, Major. No attribution. This order does not exist. The room froze. You could feel the oxygen thin out. Identify the commanding voice, the officer demanded. The tech hesitated. Cross-match completed. Voice print confirmed. General Edwin Voss, Deputy Director of Operations. A ripple of murmurs spread through the chamber, like the sound of a secret gasping for air. I didn't speak, I just watched. Watched the faces of the same men who'd mocked me, stripped my clearance, erased my name. Now they couldn't look at me. Reed had been their scapegoat, but Voss, he'd been their god. And gods don't fall quietly. The officer straightened. Effective immediately, General Voss is suspended pending criminal inquiry under Article 94. Lieutenant Holt, your record is fully exonerated. You are hereby reinstated with honors. Honors. Funny word, because by the time it's returned to you, it feels hollow, like being handed a medal for surviving your own funeral. Still, I saluted, not for them. For every name buried under classified, for my father. For the truth that almost died twice. When the session ended, Morales and I walked out together. The sun outside was blinding, the kind that makes everything look too clean to be real. She grinned weakly. You did it. I shook my head. No, we proved it. There's a difference. Think they'll actually charge him? They'll bury it under a new name, I said. They always do. But this time, there's footage. And footage doesn't forget. She laughed softly. You sound like your dad. I smiled for the first time in months. Maybe I finally understand him. That evening, I stood alone in the control bay, the same room where it all began. The screens were dark now, the hum of the machines replaced by quiet. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my father's old service patch, faded, torn, the one I used to carry before the world called me a mistake. I pinned it back onto my sleeve. Not as a symbol of pride, but as proof that truth, no matter how long it's buried, eventually finds its signal before leaving. I queued one final file to HQ's secure network, a broadcast loop labeled Spectre Debrief, full transparency. It was everything. The altered feed, Reed's confession, the order from Voss, the deaths they'd erased, a file they couldn't delete without admitting it existed. As the progress bar hit 100%. I whispered to the empty room, your silence ends here. Weeks later, word spread through the ranks. Voss was gone, retired early. His record vanished, but the file? The file lived. Someone leaked it to the press. The footage played on every major network, the same one that once condemned me. The same laughter now turned to disbelief, and for the first time, the world saw what HQ never meant anyone to see. I don't wear my uniform much anymore. I teach now data ethics for new recruits. I tell them that honor isn't about obedience. It's about responsibility when obedience goes wrong. Sometimes a student asks, if the story about the analyst who exposed a general was real, I always smile and say, that's classified. But deep down, I know the truth doesn't need my voice anymore. It speaks in the silence after the blast, and in the footage that finally played, because the day HQ showed the truth was the day the system finally saw itself.